I recently had the experience when we were driving back from New Mexico. We were in the middle of nowhere, West Texas, as I call it. And we found this precious community gift. We were in Eden, Texas, and we drove by. Rudy saw this sign that said the Garden of Eden, so of course we had to stop. And it was obvious that much love had been poured into this small plot of land. And as I walked through the gardens, there were several above ground ponds that had been built with circulating water, but there was only one of them that was full of these beautiful, bright pink lotus blossoms in several stages of opening. And it reminded me that without the mud, there is no lotus. That phrase, that this beauty comes from this dirty water, this mucky mud. In the Buddhist tradition, the lotus represents potential, the potential for awakening and enlightenment, the potential for seeing wisdom, being wisdom. And I know these past several months have been challenging for all of us with the COVID quarantine and the police brutality, the protests in the streets. There's so much uncertainty all around us and within us. And I guess my question is it possible that these mucky, dark times can be the catalyst for real awakening, for wisdom to surface and bloom in our consciousness, individually and collectively and universally, globally, for us all to find that. So just to continue the thoughts about the lotus flower, it is regarded in many different cultures, especially the Eastern traditions, as the symbol of purity, of enlightenment, of self-regeneration and rebirth. And its characteristics are a perfect analogy for the human condition that we're all living, that even when its roots are in the dirtiest waters, that the lotus produces the most beautiful flower. And unlike other flowers, the lotus, when it first begins to sprout, it's underwater. It's making its home in these lakes and ponds, in areas where the surface water seems fairly still. But there's a lot going on underneath the surface. And the lotus is surrounded by the mud and the muck and fish and insects and these dirty, rough conditions. But despite all that, the lotus flower is so strong as it pushes aside the dirt and the muck and makes its way up to the clear surface. And in the beginning, the lotus is just a stem with only a few leaves and a small flower pod. And then as the stem continues to grow and the pod slowly surfaces above the water into the fresh air, it frees itself from all these harsh conditions underneath and below. And then that is when the lotus opens individually, each petal to the sun. And even though the flower was born in that darkness, in the murky conditions, where hope for such beautiful life seems questionable, the lotus grows. It rises above its dark beginnings and it opens each petal to the air. And not a spot of mud is from its origins stays visible. And there is this inner lotus too that has been protected and is this pure, bright, beautiful blossoming. So aren't we all like the lotus flower? We live in the mud. We live with and in these obstacles and challenges, this suffering that we experience in our daily lives. No one is immune to that. And yet some of us never make it to the surface so we can blossom. Some of us are buds just waiting and ready to feel that sunshine of life. Some of us are opening our petals one at a time to the sun. Yeah, and we all face the same obstacles: sadness, loss, illness, aging, death. And in several Eastern philosophies, there's a phrase, a term called dukkha. In fact, in Buddhism, it's the first of the Four Noble Truths. And often, it's most often translated as suffering or unhappiness, pain, or unsatisfactoriness, or the stress of our mundane lives that we're living. And there are three kind of levels or types of dukkha. The first refers to the physical and emotional discomfort, the pain all humans experience. And this kind of dukkha arises in response to unpleasant physical or mental experiences or feelings or sensations. If I look at my life, I think back to about 2.5 years ago when Rudy and I and his father and his partner were in a horrible automobile wreck, and fractured and broken bones and parts of my body. I was feeling physical pain and discomfort pretty regularly, and that was that feeling, that physical sensation in my body. And then if I look at the last year with Rudy's recovery and the transitions in the circle, I'm feeling this mental grief, this sorrow about those circumstances. And there's nothing I can do to prevent this painful experience of sorrow or grief. There's nothing I can do to stop the physicalness of broken bones. These circumstances in everyone's life will include unpleasant experiences. What it is it's the aversion to the unpleasantness. It is this craving or longing for the circumstances of our lives to be different. And this craving, this longing for our lives to be different is like hitting our heads against a wall. Because that is how things are. That is how things exist. We are born. And we will experience injury and illness and old age and loss and death. And our loved ones are subject to the same conditions, and so we will keep experiencing unpleasant feelings of separation and loss. And the only way to keep this from arising constantly is to change our response to unpleasant experiences. If we can acknowledge unpleasant feelings and sensations, if we can be with them and let them run their course. And I know this is easier said than done. But if we can do that, and what it requires is mindfulness. When I can be consciously aware for myself of, yes, this broken bone is physical pain, or this grief from my husband acting out is grief and sorrow I'm feeling, and not add to the craving that I want my life to be different than it is. There's this acknowledgement that is in place. An acknowledgement is a very valuable thing to have. And then the second type of dukkha is the awareness that everything affects everything else. And it comes when we step beyond just the aversion to an unpleasant physical or mental experience, and we start in on this more stressful mental activity. In our house, we call it the shoulda, coulda, wouldas. These are the judgments, the anxiety-filled thoughts and questions, the doubting. And again, this mental activity reflects a craving for things to be how we want them to be. With my broken bones, I kept feeling like I should be stronger. I'm a bear. Bear, It's a family thing. Or the guilt and the what ifs about I should have been more careful, I should have looked better before heading into that intersection. I could have paid closer attention to my husband and his addictions. And when we can alleviate this dukkha by bringing those mental thoughts into our conscious awareness and using mindfulness practice, whether it's inside meditation or whether we're just in our daily lives, we become aware of whatever sensations or feelings that have come up. And as we get more skilled at mindfulness, at paying attention, it becomes easier to bring our awareness from the pleasantness or the unpleasantness to this impermanence of it all. Mindfulness allows us to question the validity of our thoughts. And the more time we spend focused on loving kindness and compassion, the less time we spend focused on the suffering. And the third kind of dukkha relates to impermanence or change. From our response to these pleasant experiences. So sometimes maybe you've experienced this when we have a pleasant experience that we want it to last forever. And yet the universal law of impermanence doesn't allow that. Sometimes if we're having a great meal, we want it to last forever, we tend to eat too much. Or maybe I'm speaking for myself. And during these pleasant experiences, we have this feeling that it won't last, and it won't, because change is constantly happening. I had this experience again while we were in Albuquerque last week visiting Mateo, and we had wonderful times with him and his girlfriend, Debbie, and yet there was this kind of nagging feeling that I would experience that, gosh, in a few days we'll be driving away and we won't see him for months. We don't know how long. And this feeling, this longing for a permanence, it has to be acknowledged because we will never have it. So if you feel happy, enjoy it. Don't cling to it. As we practice our mindfulness, as we become more aware of when and how we operate in our lives, and when we feel those speed bumps in the road, good reminders, right? When you or I, when we're feeling off balance, bring to awareness the act of consciously letting go of this craving, this longing, and accept the circumstances of life just as they are. As hard as it may be, accept. And even if we succeed only just for a few moments, it is a relief from being driven to try and make every circumstance of life be just as I want it to be. So we have the awareness, we have acknowledgement, we have acceptance. Because if I continue to do what I've always done, what am I going to get? More of what I've always had. We've all heard that one. And if I continue to act in ways that cause dukkha, I will continue to experience it. And yet, if we do something different, if we use our conscious awareness, then we can cultivate this wisdom. We can exit these cyclical patterns that cause us suffering. So no matter where you are in life, no matter where I am in life, if we continue to work towards more kindness and compassion, using our acknowledgement, our awareness, our acceptance, then we have that potential to open one petal at a time, to blossom into the full sun. So I invite you now to just take some time in meditation to breathe into this thought, this wisdom, the impermanence. So with a deep, focused breath, as we are alone and we are together, we honor and celebrate this practice of all the great world traditions. With eyes open or eyes closed, we breathe into this moment. May we be healthy and happy. As we meditate together, we receive clarity and courage to heal negative states of mind and to restore the essential life force within us. May we be grateful for life's gifts as we remember the kindness of others. As we remember the miracles of life, as we remember this natural world that sustains us. With gratitude in our hearts, we welcome life's challenges as opportunities that help us grow in wisdom and compassion for ourselves and others. May we be transformed into our highest ideals, and as we rest with all of existence, with the mystery of our being, as we vow to make the most of our precious lives and to become the change we would like to see in the world. Take a breath now and take a moment to contemplate your highest life ideals and renew your vow to fulfill them. May we be loving and compassionate. Just now for a moment, rest in the presence of unconditional love and compassion for others, for ourselves. We renew our loving intention to help all beings be healthy and happy, And as you breathe, open your heart to universal love, to universal compassion, and visualize the many ways to apply them out in your world. May we become mindful through our breathing, as with calm and focused breath, allow your awareness to ride your breath from the tip of your nose to your heart center, focusing your breath, observing your thoughts, your emotions, memories, and let them evaporate. Just let them go like clouds in a blue sky. Release. And breathe. And may we be of service to all beings. As we begin this process of emerging from our meditation, we vow to carry the tranquility and wisdom, this unity and compassion felt here and now into each moment of our lives. And as we breathe together, as we breathe into this moment, as we feel our feet firmly planted on the floor on Mother Earth, as we gently open our eyes, returning to this place, we feel our connection. We feel that we honor and nurture the sacred in ourselves, each other, and all of creation.